Welcome to Kevin Richards VIPs. Today's guest has been a referee his entire life, including at the OHL level. He's decided to finally hang up the skates. My guest today is Joe Park. So I'm sitting here at the Allendale Rec Center with an old buddy, Joe. Joe, nice to see you again. It's been a long time.
Good to see you, Kevin.
So this, just so you know, is me out of my element. We are standing here. I'm going to look a bit more like Bambi learning how to walk on the ice. This is not my thing. So you must feel pretty cool being back in, Barrie at the Allendale Rec Center.
Yeah.
What have you been doing? So you're semi-retired, but you're still reffing. How are you staying busy?
As I said, I've retired from the OHL.
Okay.
But I am skating the Ontario Hockey Association, which is Junior C, Junior B, Junior A, University, and Senior A hockey.
So that's keeping you busy.
That's busy, as well as I have two kids that are also playing hockey.
You coaching?
And I do help out with my daughter's team.
Yeah.
And
I bet they never yell at the ref.
No.
No.
Also, my son has also started taking up officiating as well. So the last 2 years.
What is it about that, about officiating? Like, I don't know if you just like taking abuse, but in every sport that I know, there are no real referees other than maybe cricket, where maybe they don't get yelled at as much. Like, I see hockey parents who just love to yell sometimes for the sake.
You know what? It's funny you say that, because every year there's new officials that sign up, try and make a little bit of money, and when they start officiating the first year, and like you said, there's a lot of parents that are crazy, yelling and screaming at the referees because they feel that they got gypped or whatever. But I think the unfortunate part is that when you start, especially when you start at a young age. I was 15 when I started.
Yeah. So you started reffing at 15?
I started reffing at 15 years of age.
That's like house league?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can start as young as 14. And I'm trying to picture myself back at when I was that age. It could be very intimidating with, a lot of fans, going berserk, and especially where the official has to step off the ice surface to walk into the lobby area to get into the referee's room. You do hear a lot of verbal abuse, but you have to have a little bit of thick skin. Mm-hmm. You just go out there and do the best you can, right? And that's all you can do.
And you're a community guy and stuff like that too nowadays. But back then, being young, especially being new, it's hard to be a part of a community where some people might start yelling at you, but that might kind of, maybe when you travel around, let me try and word it that way. If you travel around into other towns where they don't know you, you might take a little more abuse than maybe in your hometown. Do you notice a difference like that?
You know what? I think there's a little bit more pressure if you skate in your hometown, because there are so many people that know you.
Yeah.
And they expect you to do a great job. I don't know, when you travel out of town, like you said, a lot of the fans and players or whatever don't know you.
Yeah.
So it might be a little bit less pressure. Having said that, it doesn't matter where you go. Hockey fans are always going to be hockey fans, and you're always going to have some fans that go a little bit overboard.
Yeah.
But it's something that you just got to have thick skin for, right? So
sure. Now, when you are reffing though, getting ready to get out there, you've got to have that thick skin, like you said. But there's got to be something that inspired you, and I'm going to want to get to know more about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But what is it that makes you want to lace the skates up, makes you want to just get out there and do this? Are you just a fan of the ice? Is it that it? You just got to be out there?
Oh, definitely. Like, I first started just to make a little bit extra money.
Yeah.
And you know
what?
That's
a good start.
It was. I mean, it's this way you still kind of get to be involved in the game, and what better way than actually be on the ice? Mm-hmm. It's nice making the money, but you know what? Once you get used to it and you excel at it, and you start doing higher levels of hockey, it's amazing the rewards you get from it. Like, I mean, I started hockey in Angus. It's about 15 minutes west of Barrie.
Sure.
In a small little town, and I ended up coming into Barrie to do some higher level of AAA hockey.
Yeah.
To get better exposure and officiate the better level of hockey. And from there, I went at the age of 21. I went to Guelph to the Ontario Hockey Association. It's like a camp.
Yeah.
And from there, I got selected, and like the players get scouted, the referees also get scouted as well.
Sure.
So certain selection guys get selected to go to a camp, and from there, if you excel at it, you manage to get on. And I was lucky enough at the age of 26 to go to the Ontario Hockey League, which is the highest level of amateur hockey.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, let's take this out to the ice. Let's go for a little stroll.
Okay, sounds good.
Joe, we're out on the ice, and you can clearly see that short of having like a pylon, this is not my element. I've had friends say, get out there for a couple of seasons and maybe you'll really enjoy it. No, this is not me. The only way I'm getting out on the ice is on a Zamboni. So, freezing here. So, Joe, tell me a little bit, though. There's got to be something where you got past this of just putting the skates on, and you thought, yeah, I can do this. What? Did you watch people growing up? Was it the old Ron Hogarth days and Lou Scampi and all those guys?
I think how it first started is like every other Canadian kid, I played hockey at a young age. I think I was like 9 years old.
Hey, I'm Canadian.
Yeah, okay. So my father put me, once we moved out to Angus, I started playing hockey. Like you, I wasn't a strong skater. I went to a lot of hockey camps to work on my skating.
Yeah.
And from there, obviously, I decided to become an official because it's somehow it was something I could do to get involved, still stay in the game.
Sure.
And get paid for it.
But you didn't want to play. You wanted to officiate.
Well, the thing is, once you get to a certain age, unless you play men's league or beer league, there's no more like competitive hockey.
Yeah.
Right? So. Officiating was one way to stay involved. Being on the ice, what better way than to be on the ice with, players, right?
Yeah. So there's got to be sort of a spark, though, once in a while, too, where you see a kid when you are officiating that's got that dream, too, right? And you can see those kids who maybe have that gift. I don't even like to necessarily use gift. They've got some skill that they've worked on and trained. Did you ever have those kids? Like, who are some of the people that maybe you saw that were those Gretzky types or those Crosby types that just...
like I said, I started officiating, or in the Ontario Hockey League, I was a linesman for 5 years, and then I refereed the last 15. So I started back when Joe Thornton was with Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds.
Yeah.
And from then to the last year, I see Connor McDavid, John Tavares, Steve Stamkos. I mean, I've seen a lot of great players that have come in the league, and it's amazing that when
you shared the ice with these guys?
Exactly.
Cool.
When you're on the ice,
yeah,
and you see some of the moves that they make, you're just like, wow, that's unbelievable skill. Like that's, but like you said, what better way than to be on the ice and witness it, like on the ice level as opposed to being up in the stands.
Yeah.
So.
Well, as a hockey fan, now I haven't watched a whole lot of hockey other than, of course, Canadian hockey, because I love watching the Olympic hockey and the juniors and stuff. And I haven't watched an NHL game since Toronto lost to Boston in that playoff series that made me crazy with the 4-0 lead that they lost. Ugh. There's got to be things in hockey where you go, this has just thrown me away from wanting to do this. Is there anything that ever just made you want to throw in the black and white and just say, forget it, I'm done with this?
Like I said, you got to have thick skin, and I think, yeah, you're going to have your ups and downs. I'm not going to lie. There's times where, you got to understand that officiating, you're human, right? You're going to make mistakes on the ice.
Sure.
You're going to miss a call, which, may lead to the other team, scoring a goal, in which, had they been penalized, maybe, that might not have happened. But
like the Gilmore Gretzky.
Yeah, exactly. So you do the best you can, and I think the thing that coaches and players want is basically consistency, so that when you show up to the rink, they know, okay, Joe Park's at the rink, this is what he likes to call. And good coaches will instruct their players and say, listen, this is what he watches for, interference with the goalie. Don't be don't be mouthing him off, or any any BS after the whistle. He's going to call it.
Yeah.
So every official, I think you got to go out there. Everyone has their own personality. Some officials call it tighter than others. Some like to let them play a little bit more. So the good coaches will recognize that, and that's, I think, how they get an edge. And
well, that makes sense, because especially like you'll see it in other sports, and you'll see it just sometimes even with a teacher, for example. There's always something that, oh, I know this one teacher doesn't like this, or I know this ref doesn't like this, and he'll call this more.
Right.
You don't want to be the guy in the history books that they go, oh, remember Joe?
Yeah.
Remember when he called that one really badly?
Yeah.
You don't want that. So if you're consistent, that's great.
Right.
And you have to be able to shake it off too, right? Just as much as the guy who hits the post in an overtime, you're the guy that has to call stuff that could be a game changer.
Correct.
So you must have some stress levels too, where you're like, how do I deal with this? How do you deal with that stress?
I think a lot of it is based on your experience, being in big games. I mean, I've been told that, before you step on the ice, you should feel a little nervous, because if you don't, that's not a good thing. Like, you should feel nervous going out to every game.
It keeps you on edge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It keeps you on edge, and you go out there and like I said, you go out there and do the best you can, and that's all they can ask for, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Coaches and players, I think they respect that, and that's all you can do. I mean, I don't really have, and the other thing, I think, big thing that I've admitted that I've made a mistake, and what is the coach going to say? Like, he can scream and yell at you all you want, and if you tell him, sorry, I screwed up, there's nothing they can say. They realize. I think that's all they want, is you to admit that you made a mistake. And like I said, game of hockey is all about mistakes. If I was a coach and I'm yelling at a kid for missing a pass or missed an open net, what does that do to a hockey player? Yeah. And it's the same thing with officiating. I supervise minor hockey, which is little kids right up to midget age level, and I go out there and I supervise officials, and when I see the players and the coaches and the fans verbally abusing a certain official, obviously it's going to affect them. Yeah. And it gets to the point, I think, I don't know what the statistics are, but they are pretty high.
Sure.
A lot of first or second year officials, they end up quitting. And
I can see that.
And unfortunately, you know what? Without officials, you don't have a game.
No, you don't.
So,
well, Joe, this is about as close as I'm ever getting to playing a game of hockey. So let's go take this off the ice on some stable ground. I'll follow you, because I don't want you to have to catch me.
Sounds good.
So, Joe, this is a really cool spot for you, and I know that you've grown up in Barrie. You went to school in Barrie. I remember from high school, we hung out a little bit. I think you were more of a, the bigger kid. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about you growing up. What was it like for you growing up in Barrie? Because
so I went to high school at St. Joe's in Barrie.
Yeah.
And from grade 9 to 13, when they had grade 13 back then.
Dating ourselves.
And then obviously I went to Georgian College in Barrie as well for a 3-year business accounting management program.
Yeah.
And then I did some odd jobs here and there. I worked for Stevenson's Rental for a few years. I worked at a golf course, running a pro shop for a couple summers.
So Joe, when you reflect back and you take a look at these kids out on the ice and stuff, when you were younger, there must have been somebody who you looked up to or that was your mentor, and you said, you know what, I want to be like these guys. Or as you were becoming a ref, you were realizing that this was something you wanted to do. Who were your real role models in there?
In regards to officiating, like I said, I started at the age of 15, and there was Roger Alain out of Angus, who took me under his wing and kept me inspired to do the best I can, and eventually I came to Barrie to do a higher level of hockey. Once I got on staff with the Ontario Hockey Association I did that for a few years, and I eventually got on staff with the Ontario Hockey League.
Cool.
And from there, for the first 5 years I lined in the Ontario Hockey League, I lined for a lot of great officials. Scott Hutchinson is one guy that comes to mind.
And his name's familiar. What was he?
He's an assistant coach with the Alliston Hornets.
Okay, his name sounded familiar.
He was a referee in the Ontario Hockey League for, I think, like 10 years. Another official that I learned a lot from, Rick Shaley, who's another Barrie resident.
Yeah, and I know Rick, and I know his brother, and I know that those guys are good community people too. So that's nice to see somebody who's not just a referee; they've got a community involvement too. So as a local guy, that's a good person to be looking up to as well too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then there was another official who's now retired, but he's a supervisor in the Ontario Hockey Association. Is Ken Bannerman, who's also a Barrie resident. I probably own a lot to him. He took me under his wing, and I lined a lot of big games for him, traveling all over the province. And he pushed and excelled. He pushed me to get into the Ontario Hockey League, and so I probably have a lot to owe to him, because he definitely, probably I am where I am today because of him.
That's cool. Well, then kudos to him for sure, because I'm glad, the OHL, I'm sure, is very grateful for your refereeing, because I haven't watched a lot of hockey, but I did watch some OHL games that you were in, and I've watched how you have, there's a class on the ice, right? And that's important to maintain that. Now, there's got to be a school or something. Like, how do you get into that whole refereeing thing? You don't just go out and skate and they say, okay, sign them up. There's got to be a school. There's got to be some coaching involved. Do you take a class?
Well, every year you can attend a clinic. To become an official, you have to attend a clinic, which entails a classroom portion where you have to write a test to know the rules of the game, as well as an on-ice session.
Yeah.
So obviously, it helps if you're a good skater.
Yeah.
Have know the rules of the game, and just go out there and work as hard as you can, and be consistent. That's the main thing that I would say. To be a good official, I think that's definitely what you have to do.
Cool. And I'm sure there's been a lot of games too where you've come off the ice and somebody would say, like a coach, would genuinely mean the handshake and say, hey, good job today. And there's those games you're really proud of. There's got to be days where it's not that you are not proud of you, it's you're not proud of the people around you. So, and I think you know where I'm going with this. There's an integration into hockey, and most people, when they look back into hockey, they can't really think of who some of the real groundbreakers are until maybe you go back far enough and you see Grant Fuhr take his helmet off and you're like, what? Who is this guy? I didn't know he wasn't a white guy, right? So how do you, as integrating into the arena, did you ever deal with that as, an insult? Did anybody ever go after the cheap shots?
Looking back on it, I think you're referring to like racism.
Yeah.
I would say there is one time that I dealt with. It was in an OHL game. It was the Kitchener Rangers playing at St. Mike's, and the head coach Peter DeBoer and Steve Spott, who I give a lot of credit. It was my first year refereeing.
So you're about how old?
I would have been 30, 31.
Okay.
So
still pretty young.
I was, so now I've got the bands, and I'm now refereeing my first year. And I remember there was a comment made by a player from the bench, something about get off the boat or something like that. I end up penalizing that player, and I give kudos to those two coaches who are now with San Jose Sharks in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
They asked me, when we were coming off the ice, they asked me, what did my players say to you? And I said, no, it's okay, it's water under the bridge. And I left it alone at that. So this was in between periods. And I remember hearing a knock at the door, and those two coaches had that player apologize to me. So I give Peter DeBoer and Steve Spott a lot of credit for that. But other than that, I don't recall there being. I think racism now it's something that's looked at very, very carefully now. Like even in the Ontario Hockey League, there's a lot of repercussions if a player makes a racial slur or a derogatory comment.
Sure.
Those players are penalized big time now.
Yeah.
So
it's still out there. There's people who say, "Oh, I've got a black friend," but they're still very racist about their black friend. And that's tough.
Yeah.
So good for you and good for those two coaches. And there is an integration into hockey because you are starting to see more black people on the ice, and you're seeing more people from other ethnics that are getting onto the ice and they're playing hockey or even other sports.
Definitely.
And refereeing in a spot where you do kind of go around like that, you're the zebra with the target on your back, right? And there's going to be abuse. So what are some of give me your worst time on the ice, maybe other than that, something happened where maybe you thought about a bad call for a long time. What was it that you couldn't put your head in your pillow that night because it happened?
I don't know if there's any particular incident that I can recall, offhand. But
well, to be an official that can lay your head down on a pillow at night knowing you did the best job that you can, that's a big deal too.
Oh, for sure. I'm proud to say that I'm probably one of two Korean officials to referee the Ontario Hockey League. The other official, Ryan Park, we're not related, but
it's a lot of Parks.
Yeah, Park, Lee, and Kim are the three most common Korean names, just like Singh in India or Smith or Jones in Canada.
Yeah.
So that's something I guess to be proud of.
Well, you're not a little guy either, though, Joe.
No.
Like, if somebody looks at you, they're not going to look at you and go, "Oh, yeah, I'm just going to call him something and I can take him." You look like the kind of guy that could walk up and level some guy on the bench if you had to. You throw some 3-4-inch skates on and you're...
I think they may be part of why I've never had anyone confront me coming off the ice.
So you're lucky with that. It's good.
If someone had ever done something to me, I probably would not be officiating, to be honest with you.
So if you reflect back then, let's not talk about that negative stuff. Let's talk about the good stuff. What was your favorite moment? Like, there's got to be one thing that you would just is on the shelf. It's on the Joe shelf, and I love that moment. What is it?
There's a couple things. I'm proud to have officiated one of the first ever OHL outdoor game in 2013.
Who played?
Was in Detroit at where the Detroit Tigers play out of Comerica Park.
Oh, okay.
I did the Windsor Spitfires versus Saginaw.
And back then, the Spitfires were pretty dominant, weren't they? They were a good team?
Yeah, they were a good team.
Yeah.
Bob Bugner and Warren Reichel were on that team. Bob Bugner, I believe, is now with Columbus of the National Hockey League.
So that's a pretty big honor to be asked to be a part of such a historical moment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then doing some national championships. I've done the Allen Cup gold medal game. A few years ago, I went to Fort Francis for the Dudley Hewitt Cup, which is a provincial-wide Junior A tournament, and the winner of that goes to the RBC.
Yeah.
So there's a few that come to mind that that I'm proud to have officiated in, and
sure. So now you've got two boys who.
No, I have a boy and a girl.
Sorry, a boy and a girl. I apologize. A boy and a girl. And which one is interested in officiating? Both of them, or just one?
My daughter's not interested, but my son, he's now in his third year refereeing.
Okay. And he's how old?
He's now 16.
Okay.
So.
And is he big like you?
No, you know what? He is actually getting bigger now.
Yeah. Is he enjoying it?
He is enjoying it. And like me, I first started just to make a little extra money. And if he excels at it, great. If not,
Cool.
I'm happy with what he does.
So he's going to be looking up to you as a really great example, one heck of an example for sure. what would be your message to him if he's watching, which I'm sure he will, proud of you? What would be your message to him to say, hey, look, buddy, this is my message when you're refereeing. Always remember this. What is that message?
Well, I tell him, just like I said in the past, do the best you can, be consistent if possible, and just go out and work your butt off. And you know, he's not like me where he has that. He's a good kid, very sensitive, and I don't know, you know, if you know, he doesn't. I don't want to say take criticism well, but you know, I tell him it doesn't matter what level of hockey you do, whether it's the National Hockey League. Everybody makes mistakes. You just hopefully learn from them.
Yep.
And that's how you get better as an official, right? So whether you know, umpire baseball or referee basketball, soccer, volleyball, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that's the big thing is we're all human. We're going to make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So.
And that's a positive message, and that's a good message, I'm sure, and I'm sure he'd be proud to hear that from you too. So when you're not reffing, you're never really not reffing, are you? Like, you don't get to, like, I know you like to golf and you like to do a few things, but when you're not reffing, there's got to be some time that you have. Do you read? There's got to be something you enjoy.
You know what? I'll be honest with you. Hockey does take up a lot of. In the wintertime, I'm in the rink 6-7 days a week. In the summertime, I'll referee the odd tournament, but like you said, I like to golf in the summer.
So what's next? What's next for you?
You know what? Who knows? Maybe I'll get into coaching. Who knows? It's something that I've always thought about in the back of my mind. You know, this way you still get to stay in the game and help players out. But I think the big thing, you know, when it comes to officiating, you know, everyone's aspirations is to obviously do the highest level you can. Like players, you know, the fans need to realize that there's parents out there that think that their kid's going to be the next player to make it to the National Hockey League, and unfortunately, it's 1 out of 1,000.
I think it's even worse than that now. Don Cherry, not that I like to give him a whole lot of kudos because he can be a little crazy, he did say something years ago, and this was really smart, and it was, if you're not getting drafted in the first couple lines, don't show up and sit in the stands. Because that's got to be the most heart-wrenching thing for a lot of parents and kids, to sit in those stands and find out they didn't get drafted. That's got to be tough.
You know, I imagine it would be, but I'll tell you, there's players that I see in the National Hockey League that I've seen even in the Ontario Hockey League that I would say never would I think that they would ever make it.
Yeah.
You know, I look at someone like Andrew Shaw, who's now with the Montreal Canadiens. He played for the Owen Sound Attack, and you know what? It's all has to do with timing, hard work. You know, he worked his butt off to get there. And there's a lot of players that never got drafted by the NHL team, but somehow, one way or another, they managed to.
And people like to throw the word politics out. There's a lot of politics. There's maybe a reason that somebody might say politics prevented somebody who didn't know somebody from getting into the NHL. We get that. That doesn't even need to be talked about. But we kind of get that there's always going to be somebody who wishes they knew somebody to get them to the next level, and not everybody gets there. But I think that the OHL in the city of Barrie is better because of people like you who just play fair. And I think that's a good message for everybody to learn about Joe.
Oh, definitely.
So thank you, Joe, for being my guest today.
Thank you.
Cheers, Joe.